I wonder what happened.
It just started back up.
Okay, good. It was because I stumbled on my words, so they didn't want to record that part. All right, thank you for your patience. There are the actions and expenditures listed at the end of goal 1.
Can I just ask too that you check the numbers here? These numbers are not adding up.
Sure, I will pass that on to Dr. Moses.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the 3 action items or the action steps that were just reviewed, if you look through the detailed LCAP, they'll have detailed information regarding the personnel carrying out the work and also the non-personnel expenditures related to the work. The reason why this math is not working out is because you'll notice on action 1.2, it shows that total personnel is $364,025. Non-personnel is $300,000. But the LCFF funds only cover the personnel. That means there's another funding source covering the other amount. And so the reason why we have 3 separate columns there is because within the LCAP, there may be other funding sources related to the actions, but that final column shows you exactly the number of LCAP dollars that's included in the action step. And so I want to point out that for the 3 actions that were just reviewed, the personnel costs are approximately $7 million. The non-personnel costs are approximately $1.4 million. And in terms of the LCAP, if we were to include the non-LCAP, it would be $1.43 million. We would add the $300,000 in there, or $1.7 million. I'm sorry, my math isn't mathing. It's been a long day. However, I just want to point out that there are those issues there. This is about $8.4 million of LCAP dollars. And yeah, so that's how this chart is read and how it relates directly to what was just presented. I also want to point out that the scope is LEA wide, which means that this is a strategy that we're using for all students, but with a concentration on the academic performance of the unduplicated students, so that there's an increase in service to accomplish that. And I'll stop there.
I'm sorry, Dr. Moses, can you repeat that last sentence again?
Yes.
Please.
I'm sorry, I may be taking us on a tangent. That's not my intention. If you look through the LCAP documents, we have to name the scope of the contributing action, and that it can be a limited action, or it can be a very wide action. On our LCAP, on this particular goal in these actions, it's a wide LCAP. It's saying that it can be provided to all identified students in the LEA, regardless of whether or not they are low-income English learners or foster youth. However, I do want to point out that the goals and the metrics that we measure success by only look at the unduplicated count. Does that make sense? Do you need me to clarify further? Okay. Thank you.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. I think I can probably just sum it up by saying that the practices are not to be meant to be exclusionary. Does that make sense? To other students. I'll stop there.
All right, next slide. So we will welcome Dr. Johnson to talk about goal 2.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Camille Johnson. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources, and I'm here to present to you goal 2, which is universal systems and accessible support. So this goal, the purpose is to ensure each student is provided with high quality educators to foster anti-racist, inclusive, and accessible learning environments. We have 3 state priorities that are aligned with this goal. State Priority 2, which are our state standards, State Priority 4, which are our pupil achievement, and State Priority 6, school climate. And the adjusted targets in the LCAP 2.0 are as follows: that 80% of teachers will be retained year to year, that we will maintain 100% appropriately signed and fully credentialed teachers district-wide, and we will increase DFS on SBAC by 15 points or more. Next slide. Thank you. So goal 2 here is an overview of data related to the universal systems and accessible support. As you can see, we have listed the support that we have in place for our teachers in terms of our induction programs, our permits, our waivers, and our Teach for America program, which we have partnered with to help us recruit teachers. We also have data related to teacher absences from last year to this year. As you can see, those numbers are listed there. And then we have our teacher retention data, which is our ultimate goal, to be able to retain our teachers. And these programs help us reach that goal. Next slide. So when we're looking at LCAP 2.0, we have action steps available right here. The first one, the first one is related to our red indicator, and our first one is related to action 2.1. And in order to effectively address our red indicators, which include improving English language arts outcomes for Hispanic, Latinx language learners, and students with disabilities. It also includes improving math outcomes for foster youth, Hispanic, Latinx, and language learners. And it also includes improving our graduation rate for foster youth and students with disabilities. We've designed a series of strategies to help with recruitment and to retain staff in order to service and support student achievement. So as you can see, program 1760 is listed. Through this program, we are able to provide additional staff for identified students with high unduplicated pupil counts. So through this, we provide staffing to our highest needs schools. And we also have, I'm sorry, let's talk about the strategy just for a minute. The strategy allows us to provide additional number of staffing. It allows us to provide professional development, and it allows our staff to become have greater access to high quality instruction and to learn the skills and necessary strategies that will help them in improving student achievement. We also have action 2.2. So in order to effectively address the red indicators in action 2.2, which again are improving our English language arts outcomes for our Hispanic, Latinx language learners and students with disabilities, improving our math outcomes for our foster youth, Hispanic, Latinx, and language learners. And then lastly, again, improving our graduation rate for our foster youth, students with disabilities. We have action 2.2. Through action 2.2, we have program 2315. Program 2315 is our employee recruitment and retention plan. And we have provided support that's needed to recruit new teachers and retain them in the profession. These strategies have been created with support of the County Office of Education through technical assistance. And we have 3 listed strategies related to this action. With these strategies, all teachers in the state of California are required to clear their preliminary credential. However, most teachers have to pay the cost to clear that credential, and it can be costly. It's often a burden for our teachers. And through program 2315, we have found ways to support them in going through their credential program and being able to also provide for them a salary while they are working for us. Our ability to offer in-house cost-free induction program is a huge recruitment tool. It offers a salary, as I stated before, the fringe benefits, along with additional costs to support their education. It also creates an opportunity for the district to provide streamlined professional development to new teachers and teacher mentors because it is done in-house through our district office. The professional development is tailored to the needs of new teachers and includes training in anti-racist pedagogy that is crucial to the needs of our particular students that we serve in our community. And this need is also amplified by the fact that the majority of our staff are not representatives of our students. The ability to provide professional development, anti-racist practices, and best instructional practices to support teachers is critical to academic achievement and creating a standard of excellence. Our competitive salaries. Recruiting and retaining quality staff is essential for improving learning conditions for our students. And our ability to offer and maintain a competitive total compensation package for our teachers allows our district to recruit quality educators to serve our students. Staffing all schools is our first priority to ensure the basic conditions of learning are met. In addition to that, training new staff and supporting the growth of new teachers who are in the programs that I previously mentioned is critical to the development of our instructional program. It also helps us to ensure that our vacancies are filled. We have learned that as teachers are supported and provided the professional development, they are more likely to return and come back the year, allowing us to retain our teachers. And again, having the programs that we have in place to support new educators, having a competitive total compensation are really great efforts for recruitment and training to ensure that we get quality educators in our district. And lastly, we have a strategy of Teach for America. And in order to support filling vacancies, the district continues to have a partnership with Teach for America. Teach for America recruits teaching candidates who are largely recent grads who have demonstrated excellence in leadership. It is a rigorous application process that they go through in order to become a member of Teach for America. And once selected, these candidates become intern teachers within our school district. And they serve as full-time teachers while earning their credentials simultaneously. The philosophy of Teach for America is that people who demonstrate excellent leadership have the initiative and work ethic to learn how to teach and show emergent excellence as a new teacher at the same time. And while we acknowledge that the goal is to staff classrooms with experienced teachers, we also acknowledge that Teach for America brings enthusiasm and passion to our schools, and they bring teachers who are highly supported and prepared to make a difference in the lives of our students and also help fill our vacancies. Next slide. And here we have our expenditures and actions related to Goal 2.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I just want to point out with this expenditure and action template that it is a very expensive goal. However, we have witnessed the difficulty in moving our students along if we can't be competitive to attract teachers to our district. So we look at being competitive within the county and the Bay Area for that reason, because our unrestricted general fund could not accommodate the negotiated raises. We thought outside of the box and used the LCAP in order to support that so that we could staff our classrooms, which is really crucial for the learning of our unduplicated students especially. So this strategy, the total personnel is approximately 25 million. Non-personnel is approximately, it's 215,000. However, I do want to point out that in Action 2.2, about $600,000 of that action is not funded by the LCAP, but that the total amount for the LCAP is about 24.4 million for the strategy, which is critical for staffing our classrooms to serve our students best. And I'll stop there and pass it on to Summer.
Yeah, we actually, on the next slide, I believe we have another pause point for a question from each of our PACs. Martine?
Yes, so there were 3 questions in the chat that were echoed by participants. The first question is, and I'm not sure if this is a question that's it's specifically related to goal 2, I believe. These are all strategies that we have used in the past that have not been proven successful for us. What new strategies will be employed to retain and hire new educators?
Well, I can say that one of the things that we really need to look at as a district and will be an area of focus is really when you look at data, as you all I think are mentioning, you state broad examples and maybe perhaps not going more linear. So what we need to do is really look at the exit surveys that people complete to find out why is it that they are not returning to our school district. Is it the cost of living? Is it they feel that they do not have a lack of support? I don't have those exact answers today, but as we continue this work, we can look at to find what are the reasons why teachers are not returning. And based on that, we can make changes as we move further on in the school year.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. That also relates to one of the questions, and I believe you answered this. So one of the things that you named is implementing a root cause analysis moving forward, which is one of the things that was suggested by community in the chat. The other question that was lifted is who ensures that after the PD, that what staff were taught in the PD is actually being implemented in the classroom and all children are learning. How do we ensure that?
I think I will pass that one on to Catherine. It's related to more ed services.
Correct. Thank you.
Yes. And we are actually going to be talking about that when we transition to goal 3, but very specifically, this is the role of our instructional leader on campus, right? And so making sure that we are taking what is learned and we're seeing the effects of that in the classroom. And when I talk about the strategies and actions for goal 3, I'll address some of that.
Thank you. Those were all the questions that were in the chat. Committee, are there any questions related to goal 1 or goal 2 that you need to lift, would like to lift?
I'm happy to make a comment if nobody else from the LCAPs has one. So, just so I'm clear, this goal is all about, or not all about, big part of this goal is about retaining our teachers. And what I heard is we don't actually know why teachers are leaving. I'm sorry, that's wild to me. Every other organization in the world knows why folks are leaving their organization and they make adjustments to change that. So if that is what this is part of this goal is, that needs to get fixed ASAP. So I would love to hear some clear plans and when you're going to come back to us with some actual data around why our teachers are leaving. Our goal is 80%. We're at 62. That's a huge gap.
Yes, sir. I completely agree with you. And the whole purpose of us having these meetings is to be able to identify where our shortcomings are and then move forward to correct them. So we're being transparent, and that is a comment that is very valid, and we take that feedback to make those changes. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next set of goals.
Great, so we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to now dive into goal 3, relentless attention to achievement. And this goal, again, it was goal 1 in the previous LCAP, now goal 3 to align to our strategic plan. And it's to empower each student to graduate with the essential skills to be college and career ready in a multilingual technology-driven world. And specifically, this goal is aligned with state priority 2 of state standards state priority 4 of pupil achievement and state priority 8 of other pupil outcomes. We have ensured that we're reporting all the essential metrics that align to those state priorities. However, we're also adjusting some metrics in LCAP 2.0. And by 2027, we're looking to increase the number of students who are moving up one English language progress indicator level by 9%. We're also looking to increase DFS, which is the distance from standard, on SBAC state assessments by 15 points or more, which means we're going to significantly increase that achievement. We've added an early literacy local indicator of 95% of our students in transitional kindergarten meeting the end of year grade level benchmark, and uppercase letter recognition as measured by ESGI, our internal data platform for our TK programs. We've added the local metric of tracking college courses offered within the high school day. And we are going to monitor the increase of percentage of students that are early on grade level and above on iReady K through 12. And so today we're really just going to focus on some of those initial metrics that we have available. But I do want to note that it is important that now we're going to have an achievement local indicator that's similar K through 12th grade. We've never had that. We're going to take a look at some of our iReady data. This data being reported out is only going to include the data for kindergarten through 8th grade. We will be implementing iReady in our secondary programs, so we will have fresh data in August. So we're just going to take a sneak peek, but we're really excited about what it means to be able to have a metric that really measures achievement locally with iReady K through 12. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a dive into reading and looking at our local assessment. So as you can see in that first column on the left, we have the initial 23-24 fall data. In the middle column, we have the growth that we saw in the winter. And then we see in the far right, the growth that we saw in the spring. And so looking at the very bottom at the legend, we're looking at in the red, students that are falling 3 or more grade levels below expected outcomes. In the yellow, we're seeing students who are 1 grade level. In the orange, 2 grade levels. And really what we're seeking to improve is students in the green. So early on grade level and mid grade level and above. And so as you can see, the data shows us that we're seeing some increase from fall to winter to spring. So from fall, looking at the green, we went from 23% to 40%. And that's a big growth. Obviously, this means that a very high percentage of our students are still not what we want them to be, but it's giving us initial indicators that what we're doing is working. We just need to focus a little bit more to be able to see higher growth. If you look at now the graphic on the far right, this tells the same, uses that same data, but tells us a little bit differently, more at the individual level, what percentage of students have progress to typical growth in reading. And so as you can see, 48% of our students met their goal of 100%. And so each student is given a metric and a goal, and 100% of 48.4% of our students met their metrics 100% of the time. Most of our other students fell in the middle, and then we see a bigger gap in the red. And so we're noticing that many of our students, only 19% progress and below met. So we're going to take a closer look at the strategies that are going to address and use data to inform how we can get some of those students who are further behind to improve. So if you go on to the next slide, we're going to look at the same reading iReady data, but now looking at our student groups. So on the far right, you see our African American students, then our American Indian students, our Asian students, and our Filipino students. And you can see that the story aligns, that we see some increases in the green throughout our student groups, some much more than others. And so there's a real need here to really focus on our student groups that are not making adequate progress fast enough. And particularly as you look at these sides, we see that our African American students really stand out as an area of focus. You can go on to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, so in this slide, I want to apologize. We're not going to review our math data because there seems to be an issue happening with EduClimber, and it's not tagging all of our students when we look at our central numbers. So you can see it's only pulling data from a very small number of students. And so this data is last end of year data anyway. So we commit to bringing you more specific data that will come back in the fall, including K through 12th grade. To report out our fall measures, but I don't want to review something that doesn't really include all of our students. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide. And then one more. One more slide. There we go. Okay, so average distance from standard. I want to take a minute to really talk about this because this is a new metric that we are reporting out and want to make sure that everyone understands why this metric is really important. And so our students take the SBAC score, and we are going to be using the overall distance from standard for schools to be able to track progress. When you think about a student taking the SBAC test, each student is given a distance from standard score. And so as you can see, the student on the left is -12. The student, so they are 12 points below standard. The student kind of next to that first student is +18. So that means they're scoring above standard at 18 points, and so forth and so on. And so we take a look at DFS because it takes into account every single student divided by the number of students that took the assessment and gives us an overall score and really paints a picture of the average growth of students at that school site. What is important to note here is that in order to be able to get an accurate number, we have to assess 95% of our students, and we know this has been a challenge. And so this is something that we're going to be working on. But when we don't meet that requirement of assessing 95% of our students, we get dinged and they take away points. And so it's really important to know that as we work on making sure that our data is really inclusive of all of our students, this specific data is going to give us discrete growth measures. So if we go on to the next slide, we can actually see what that looks like for 22-23 in ELA and 22-23 in mathematics. So you can see, so when we describe distance from standard, when we're below, we add the negative because we're below standard. And then when we're above, we just include the positive number. So you can see that the data for our all students is, let me make sure that I click over here, is -53.7 DFS, which is an actual, it's obviously below where we want to be, but is an actual growth from the year prior. For African American students, we see -89.2 DFS, which is again significantly below where we want to be, but is an increase. And then as we work down our student groups, you can see that we've seen increase in our student populations or maintained, but specifically we've seen a decline in the performance of our Hispanic students, of our EL students, and those are also what's driving our red indicators. In mathematics, we can see that our all student is a little bit lower than our ELA with -86.8 DFS, but it is an increase from the year prior. And we see an increase in student groups as we go down. And then again, when we look specifically at our unduplicated count students, we see an incline of our English language learners, and we see a maintain for our foster youth. And so when determining our goal, you might wonder, why did we land on 15 points, right? How is that determined? And so what we looked at is if you look at the very far right of that 5x5, for our academic indicator, we are looking to increase by 15 points, which means we're going to significantly increase student achievement. We, want to be really intentional about urgently moving each one of our student groups. Okay, so we can go on to the next slide. So now let's talk about how we're going to get there. And again, we're going to be bringing fresh data when we come back together, because we want to make sure that we're really looking at our local indicators and our new students who are coming to us now for iReady and ELA and math for kindergarten through 12th grade. But for supporting this goal is going to be action 3.1, and through program 000 allocations to schools, we are going to be providing $3.8 million from our LCFF to support school sites to implement their SPSA goals, and their goals are aligned to this LCAP. We're going to be using specifically 3 different strategies. Someone in the chat mentioned that root cause analysis. We agree we need to be data informed. And so through the staffing in this program, we are going to help sites to be able to analyze data specific to their school and prioritize actions and strategies. And this is a process, right, that's done both by the site leader, but also educational partners, the ILT and the community. Strategy 2 is really making sure that those goals and actions are aligned. So our staff are really going to support site leaders to be able to do that and monitor that and ensure that there's strong alignment. And then strategy 3 for this is going to ensure that we have proper review and approvals of our SPSA. This is an area that we need to do some growth in. You've seen that we've had to bring iterations of our SPSA in different buckets, and we want to make sure that we're doing better to be able to engage our educational partners, including our PACs and SSCs from the school sites, to be informed around the data and the decision-making that's happening at school sites that are driving actions. So looking at action 3.2, this is specifically providing increased staff to support planning and execution of Tier 1 instruction using a standards-aligned curriculum and assessment. So when we're talking about what are the staff doing, we have lots of different strategies here that are really going to target core instruction in Tier 1. So specifically around strategy 1, it's that TK instructional assistance. We know that that first year of school in TK is really important. And so we want to make sure that we're adding staff to classrooms to be able to increase the ability to do small group instruction with a real focus around those foundational skills. So when we're tracking TK upper grade letter sounds, these are the people who are going to be able to tailor that instruction to make sure that we're making that growth. And we know that certificated staff in the classroom are going to work closely with these staff to use data to drive the strategies and interventions necessary to provide each student with the support that they need to be able to begin to read. When we look at strategy 2, elementary prep teachers, we know that teachers need time to be able to plan and provide really strong first-time instruction, and to be able to have time to go visit each other and watch and learn from each other, as well as to have time to analyze data and tailor lesson plans to students. And so prep teachers are not only going to release our gen ed teachers in order to be able to do that, but they're also supporting us in being able to provide arts education and other contents to enhance the student learning experience. And then strategy 3 for action 3.2 is supplemental curriculum and assessment. And so we know that in order to be able to provide strong math and ELA supports, we need to be able to differentiate. And sometimes the current tools that we're using are not as effective as we want them to be. So we need to supplement sometimes through the use of research-based curriculum. For example, that SIPS curriculum that I talked about that's really working. That is a science of reading aligned curriculum that's really helping us to provide that structured phonics that students need to be able to read. We also support CSA learning platform through this, and then ESGI assessment platform to be able to help our teachers to use that data that they get from the classroom to tailor instruction for students. So action 3.3 is program 1251, secondary school supports. And through this program, we're supporting secondary students by supporting career pathways, secondary lead counselors, and then the IB program. And so I'm going to go a little bit into each strategy. But through career pathways, we are increasing access to improve college and career preparedness. And so the staff specifically are going to work to increase work-based learning opportunities and quality instruction within the career, which are pathways tailored to each school site based on student interest and the need of the community and local workforce data. And so this effort is led by our Director of College and Career, and the program provides funds for CTE teachers and college and career counselors to ensure that students are on track to complete their A to G requirements. And this, like I mentioned earlier, this program is complemented by CTIG and Perkins funds, which directly supports our pathway works. Our second strategy supporting secondary programs are the secondary lead counselor. So this person is really critical to increasing graduation rates and college preparedness in the district. And they're going to help align the expectation of secondary classrooms or secondary counselors at all high schools, because we want to make sure that we're promoting the use of best practices to support students in making academic and career plans, and then that's consistent across our secondary programs. And so we don't want to go to one school and expect one set of expectations. We need to be aligned in order to be able to support our students. So the central secondary lead counselor is going to work with the A to G team to ensure that all students have access to an A to G program. And then they're going to hold meetings to increase that coherence that I talked about, to ensure that our graduation rates are really focused also on meeting those student groups that we said weren't yet showing improvement. And we know that this counselor is also really critical to training district counselors, making sure that we're collaborating across schools to align on those best practices, and then to use that School Links platform that I talked about to create a 4-year plan for all our students. And then the third strategy is the IB program. And we want to make sure that we're developing a broad course of study that supports all students. And so the IB program is a strategy to do that at the specific schools in which they are provided. And we're really trying to develop that inquiry, that knowledgeable, caring young adult to be able to create a more peaceful world. And the staff will continue to provide that high quality education program that's specific to those school sites. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. So Action 3.4 provides Program 1290, Supplemental Instructional Program. So here's that capacity building that I was talking about earlier. We want to build the capacity of our educators at all levels through curriculum development, instructional coaching, and the development of pedagogical practices for students preschool to 12th grade. And we want to make sure that we have the right tools, including software and other programs, to align district goals and have a unified approach. And so our first strategy, and this kind of speaks to that question of why are we funding people, is that we need focused district leadership. In order for us to increase student achievement, we need to provide the central personnel necessary to create and implement cohesive district-wide instructional priorities. We can't all be doing lots of different things, and the staff is key to setting those expectations and ensuring that our district instructional practices are aligned to the latest research and best practice to support our students. And so this staff is going to support in this strategy a set of district expectations for the effective implementation of our standards aligned curriculum at Tier 1, which means the instruction that people get in the classroom the first time. And they're going to support ongoing classroom observations as well as professional development centrally. Key staff, as I mentioned earlier, include the director, the content area coordinators, the instructional coaches, and they're going to focus preschool through 12th grade with literacy, STEM, and technology. And reflecting on our achievement data, we are seeing some positive trends, but we want to deeply invest in professional development and really working in collaboration. We have to do this work together with our school educators to make sure that we're making district-wide instructional improvements for all our students, but very specifically for our student groups that we're not seeing yet improve. And so looking at our specific strategies for this action, we're looking at strategy 2 now of educational technology. And so this was called e-learning before, but it's educational technology. And we want to make sure, like I said earlier, that we're really preparing our students to be ready for this tech-driven world of the day. You know that our students have a one-to-one Chromebook device, and we also are ensuring that our teachers have Promethean active panels, and we can't just give people resources and not train them on how to use it. We don't just want to project things on Promethean boards. We want to enhance the learning and make sure that we're really interacting and really creating and collaborating using those tools. And our central leadership really leads that effort, and our TTLs at sites through our stipends really support that work on the ground at school sites and tailors it to the need of the site. Strategy 3 for this program is EduClimber. I just talked about how it's not pulling the right data. It will eventually, but we know that we need to use data to inform our practice. And this is key to ensuring that we have student achievement. And so we're implementing EduClimber, and really, you know, if you don't know what it is, it's an interactive district level whole child data management tool. And so it allows us to really look at broadly at the district, but then also to be able to focus in and study and see where we see pockets of success as well as where we see pockets of need. And having this resource is really going to allow us the ease of access of data, both centrally and at the site level, to do that root cause analysis that is very needed to make sure that our programs are tailored to the needs of our students in our district. And then lastly, the strategy 4 for action 3.4 is extended learning credit recovery. In order to very specifically increase graduation rates, we need to offer diverse ways for students to have credit recovery and extended learning opportunities. So we are investing in Edgenuity licenses for high school students, and making sure that that is offered centrally during the year and also during the summertime, during extended learning. So taking a look at action 3.5, this action specifically is program 1102 multilingual program support. This is going to ensure that we offer a rich bilingual experience for our multilingual learners. And we want to make sure that we're affirming and supporting students' home language as an asset to advancement in English, Spanish, and Mandarin proficiency. And so this specifically provides 3 different strategies. So strategy 1 is that BCLAD stipend, and specifically we are trying to and supporting the recruitment and retention of those highly qualified teachers who hold this BCLAD certificate in our DLI programs. And we feel like this is going to support student achievement efforts in those spaces. For strategy 2, we have DLI PD and collaboration. We spoke to this need a little bit earlier when we did our annual review. We need to accurately reflect the biliteracy trajectory and support achievement of our students in DLI programs. And we know that we need to do that through professional development and collaboration across sites. And so we want to make sure that we're intentionally building this professional learning space guided by our multi-language or our ELMA department to make sure that we are being really aligned. We also know that there's a need for aligned assessments in reading and writing, right? The ones that I spoke to that really accurately reflect that biliteracy trajectory learning that students are on that is different than any other student in the district. And so right now, we're in the process of exploring and piloting different assessments that might better inform our effectiveness of this strategy. And then for strategy 3, educational technology tools, this is really specifically addressing that differentiation that needs to happen using different educational technologies tools like Seesaw, Text Help, Equation, and Orbit, which allow and remove barriers for our students who are English language learners and can enhance and allow access experience for our students in the classroom. So action 3.6 is specifically providing site-based central support to focus on the evaluation and program monitoring. So this is program 5260. This program is really helping our districts and our district central office and site office to be able to use that data analysis, that specialized training that is very much needed to do this work well, and to implement these programs, as well as the evaluation and monitoring. So this has been a program that's been in place and ensures that we have the right staff to give us ongoing training to be able to implement the programs and the grants and the categorical funding in the appropriate way. We can go on to the next slide. For action 3.7, this is program 6110, professional development. And again, this is back to that capacity building that I started talking about. We want to make sure that our educators at all levels have the right tools, both in terms of central curriculum development, instructional coaching, and then the development of pedagogical strategies for students pre-kindergarten and preschool through 12th grade. And so specifically, this program provides similar strategies around a focused leadership approach. For this specifically focused on providing support around classroom observations, around humanities and STEM, to help our site leaders and our teachers to reflect on their achievement data, and to provide really aligned professional development that helps both district but site level. And so if you can imagine, these central staff are going out to sites, we're observing together and noticing trends and really using those observations to guide the need around curriculum development and around professional development. And we believe that this capacity building and data informed practice is actually going to continue to help us to improve outcomes for students, and specifically allow our sites to focus and our district to focus on the student groups that are not making growth. And so strategy 2 is really around focusing on our CSI sites. And so our CSI sites, comprehensive support and improvement schools, are schools that have been identified as having the most challenges with student performance. And we know we need to spend special care and time to support them, because they need the most attention in order to improve student outcomes. And so through the use of communities of practice, staff members are going to support site leaders to be able to analyze multiple sources of data, right? Because we can't just use one measure, to be able to identify and change practice for both tier 1 instruction, but also for tier 2. Because we know that first time instruction, right? We're going to have some students that are going to need additional supports, and we need to provide those interventions in tier 2 and tier 3 as well. And we believe that this is going to accelerate student achievement, especially for our underrepresented groups, to be able to close that gap. And, you know, again, this strategy is really focused on promoting systems of regular instructional feedback with a focus on universal student access and effective instruction. And so earlier we had the question of whose job is it to make sure that we are implementing the things we are learning in the classroom. And I said it's the instructional leader. And to be very explicit, the instructional leader needs to be the principal, right? And that principal's responsibility is to be able to go into the classroom to give teachers that timely feedback that they need. And as a central team, we are going to support that collectively. And so that leads us right into strategy 3, which is our instructional learning walks. And so the curriculum and instruction staff specifically funded through the program are going to provide site leaders to utilize research-based K-12, the IPG, which is the instructional practice guide. And it's a tool, it's an observation and feedback tool that we're using district-wide to observe exactly what's happening in the classroom and align around what is expected around instruction to make sure that we're aligned to the college and career ready standards. The current reality is that when we walk into classrooms, we don't see the rigor that we need to see in every room. And so the IPG is going to help us to identify where the need is, both centrally and at the site level, so we can provide support to be able to move practice both centrally and at the site around instruction. Strategy 4 is around secondary department leads. And so when we think about the scale of difference, we have support at the secondary level to have this work be also owned by our secondary department leads. And so we believe that this strategy is going to increase student achievement at the secondary level because it's these lead teachers that provide that collaboration and facilitate that standards-based planning and analysis at the secondary level. And our educators will work with their principals and our central team, but those very content-specific secondary department leads can guide their colleagues in that work as well. And this program is also funded through Educator Effectiveness Grant. And we believe that collectively, these strategies and actions both describe a picture of what the people are doing and believe that they're really going to support us in realizing the goals of Goal 3. So now I'm going to pass it to Summer to present Goal 4. Oh, nope, just kidding. I'm going to pause specifically, and I meant to move the slide, so I apologize. So this data was showing us graduation and A to G completion rates, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that when we do our data dive in the fall. So we can go on to the next slide. And now we can take a look at the actions and expenditures, and Dr. Moses can speak to them.
Thank you, Catherine. I don't want to take up too much time here. I think we understand how the budget slides match the actions and goals. Just want to give you some overall information, but also use this slide as an example of how budgets shift from interim to interim. If we look at action 3.1, allocation to schools, it's listed in total non-personnel costs because we give the 3.8 million to the school sites in one object code, usually the 4000s object code. At that point, the schools then align the budget to their SPSAs, and what they do, sorry, my daughter just turned on a light. What they do is then decide where they want to place that money. They may place some in personnel, they may place some in contracts, they may place some in materials and supplies, but the changes that they do based upon their allocation will not show up until first interim when we have their actual budgets in place. So I just wanted to share an example of why you may see changes in the budgets. That's a small example. But we can dig deeper into why some of the other changes happen at a future meeting dedicated to budget. I welcome that. But I want to, for this Goal 3, there's a total of $34.4 million allocated to this goal. And of that amount, approximately 28 million is funded through the LCAP. And the remaining amount is funded through other resources to support the implementation of these actions. And I'll stop there because I know time is of the essence and see who's next.
Thank you, everyone. We have a few more goals. I know this is a lot. I invite everyone to take a deep breath and stomp their feet a little bit, as I know it gets hard to keep sitting. Goal 4 is around, multi-tiered systems of support for our students with disabilities and for services before students are identified as having IEPs. This aligns with pupil achievement, pupil engagement, and school climate. And really, this is about accelerating the growth for students with disabilities and by providing adaptive resources to supplement their growth. And so the target here is to decrease chronic absenteeism by 9%, increase the percentage of students early on grade level by 9%, and decrease suspensions by 15%. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So the first program is about really supporting school psychologists and making sure that students have access to school psychologists, to early speech intervention, and to supplemental adaptive curriculum. What we know is research has shown that early intervention, particularly in speech, is effective. And so when we can ensure that students have intervention at the first sign of delay, we're able to successfully help them remediate, and that ongoing support is very critical. Next slide. So if we look at our reading data, we can see that we have seen growth. We're looking at a fall to spring metric. But we still need to accelerate that growth more. This is not enough, but we know we are seeing progress. And particularly, we are reducing students in the red, which makes them closer for the next year. We do acknowledge this math data. We did still have an EduClimber issue there, so we are pleased looking at the ELA data. The graduation rates are disproportionate, and so we do need to continue to examine the supports in our high schools, both students being ready when they enter high school, and having the supports to make it through high school and graduate on time. Next slide. We have made a lot of progress with our students with disabilities in looking at chronic absenteeism, in decreasing chronic absenteeism and increasing attendance. Next slide. You can see the actions and expenditures. We are back here again at this brief goal.
Thank you, Summer. And I'll just say for this one, this might be a good opportunity to talk about personnel. This strategy has 3.7 million in personnel, and that matches the LCFF allocation for this goal. Just to put the funding in perspective for this action in particular, most of the positions are partial positions, not full positions, but so that we can kind of measure what 3.7 million might purchase in terms of personnel. I'd just like to share that the average cost, if we were to hire 7 full-time teachers, that would be the equivalent of $1 million. So I just want to be able to put a dollar amount to how much positions cost, so that we can kind of quantify why so much of this is staffing and personnel to carry out these actions. So I'll stop there and we can continue.
Okay, so it's back to me, and now looking at goal 5, we're really focusing on those targeted interventions and support. So this is where we're going to be talking around making sure that we're accelerating academic growth and reducing disproportionate outcomes for our focal student groups, which include foster youth, homeless, English language learners, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students, African American and Latinx students, which, as you know, is reported as Hispanic. This goal specifically is aligned to 2 state priorities of 4, people achievement and 5, people engagement. And we are looking to increase the percentage of students, again, around iReady, but specifically looking at those groups. We're looking to decrease suspension rates by 15%. We're looking to increase the percentage of students moving up in LP level. And then we're looking to decrease that long-term EL student population by 15%. So we can go on to the next slide. And so let's take a look at our reading iReady data, specifically for our unduplicated count. And so on the far left, you see the achievement of our English learner students, our foster youth in the center, and then our socioeconomically disadvantaged students on the far right. And you can see again, the trend in reading is that we are seeing growth, but we're not seeing the accelerated growth that we want to see. And the same is true, but we are seeing a bigger increase in our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So you can go on to the next slide. And so very specifically, we're looking at a key data of our African American students here. You can see reading placements on the left being the fall and the spring being the right, and we see growth. And you can go on to the next slide. We're going to go ahead and skip the math slides again. I apologize for that. So skip one more time. Beautiful. And I want to just take a pause to really reflect and show where program is being really effective when we're using. And this data really speaks to our iReady data for our Mission 7 schools that we talked about. As you can see here, so fall is in the red, winter is in the black, and spring is in the green. And from the very top, you can see students who are mid at above grade level and then working their way on down. And every single area, you see an improvement of student growth. And then as we work our way to the bottom for students being below, we see it the opposite way. So things are trending positively, and we're noticing that our implementation of these targeted interventions using SIPs is really working. So we're leaning on that strategy. You can go on to the next slide. The same is true for our Mafanikyo program that is supporting after school enrichment and targeted interventions for specific schools who have that Mafanikyo program. So we see that same pattern of growth, both growing from fall to spring in the students who are mid at above grade level, and then decreasing in the students who are 3 grade levels and below. You can go on to the next slide. So specifically, let's take a look at some of our English learner data. So this is our LCAP overall levels. Right now, or when I took the screenshot, we had 7,480 active English learners in our district. This data fluctuates constantly. We're always assessing students, and likely if I pulled up this data today, it's going to look a little bit different. We have 1,795 students that have reclassified, and we are monitoring them to make sure that they're continuing to make progress. From that number, 1,321 students were identified as long-term ELs, and 1,088 students are at risk of becoming long-term ELs. And then 1,246 students are students who are English language learners, but are also students who have IEPs. And so when you look at the breakdown of below that graph, the students who are listed in 0 likely need to finish sections to be able to have a score. But really, we see that first column, students who have an LPAC level of 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so you can see that we have a concentrated number of students who are falling within 1 and 2. You can go on to the next slide. And so this data is actually looking at regression. So we talked about the number of active EL students. And so we're seeing that we need to invest and really focus, because we had 3,121 students who did not grow in listening, 3,221 students who did not grow in speaking. And the same goes down. You can see those numbers with no reading growth and no writing growth. And so we're really looking to invest, and we'll use and speak to the strategies for how we're going to do that. You can go on to the next slide. And so we've been talking about proficiency. And so here are those accurate numbers. And you can see that we've been slowly coming back in our reclassification numbers, but we're still not where we need to be and where we were in pre-pandemic numbers. You can go on to the next slide. And so one highlight that we've been mentioning as a metric is this key, this program and this strategy around internationals program, particularly at Richmond High School. And so this started with a cohort of 9th graders in the 18-19 school year. And since then, we've been able to see the graduation rates double. And so we're really excited about the supports that are happening and really how that's leading to being able to graduate specifically a higher number of our newcomer students. And we are being intentional about making sure that those courses that are provided through our newcomer program are A to G, that meet the A to G eligibility. And as you can see in the data, that's not reflecting yet. But we're looking forward to focusing on that and seeing that metric improve. Go ahead and go on to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk specifically about what we're going to do to improve these numbers. So when we look at Action 5.1, this is Program 4170, English Language Learner Support. And really, again, we're using this central approach to be able to provide the support that sites need to be able to implement curriculum that's appropriate for our multilingual learners, community outreach for these programs, instructional programming, as well as coaching for teachers that specifically instruct English language learners. So when we look at our strategies, strategy 1, again, is really providing that focused leadership centrally to hold us accountable to meeting these goals and actions and making sure that we're appropriately supporting our English learners in the classroom. So making sure that teachers are using that best practice that we know is essential to making sure that both instruction during designated ELD time, but also integrated instruction is happening. Strategy 2 is around professional development and improving the professional development that our teachers are receiving through our ALMA department to make sure that those ELD strategies are aligned and are helping support student access during content area instruction. Strategy 3 is around those specialized EL assessments that I talked about really are needed. We want to make sure that we are using data to inform our instruction, particularly for our English language learners. This is a gap that we've seen both in our LPAC data, in our SBAC data, and in our already data. And so we know that we need to administer local assessments to improve that. And so one added strategy is that we are going to be implementing the interim LPAC assessments, 3rd grade through 12th grade in the fall and winter, to give us that timely data that we need to be able to correct our approaches and our instruction to support our English language learners. We believe that this is what's going to support student achievement and that focus that we need for ELs. We're also going to analyze and continue to support our students who have been reclassified. We don't want to forget about them. We know that they still need some additional supports, and so we ask teachers to continuously monitor that. Strategy 4 for action 5.1 is our internationals and newcomer program. We know that newcomers have this very unique need at all levels. And so we're really committed to providing very specialized programs centered around the schools that have those highest number of newcomer students and making sure that we're really enabling them to be able to graduate on time and also meeting the A to G aligned courses. For strategy 5, we have enhanced translation services. We know that we want to support community engagement and families that speak a different language than English, and we need to ensure that we provide services available simultaneously, like we've done today, year-round, to make sure that we're working in partnership with our families and our community. And so these supports are going to be provided at ceremonies, at all district events, at board meetings, at parent-teacher conferences, all those key pieces for educational partner engagement, because this is essential to creating that two-way communication and partnership that we know is essential for student achievement and to enhance the family and student experience. For action 5.2, specifically, this is targeting our African American student achievement. And it's important to note that of our African American student population, 73.7 are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And when we look at our total foster youth population, 45% are African American. And so in order to effectively address our indicators that are red, we need to have a targeted action to support our African American students. So specifically through program 1180, we're going to be taking a deep dive and making sure that we are focusing our efforts to support this student group. And so we're going to strategy 1, again, that focused district leadership, right? So we have a coordinator who is focused solely on ensuring that we have cohesive district-wide instructional priorities focused around making sure that our African American students are successful at all of our school sites. And one key difference here is that we've been really focused on implementing program at our mission critical schools, the 7 that we're seeing growth in. We really want to extend that out and help site leaders and teachers to really focus in on this student group and support them to implement some of the strategies that we're seeing be effective at these schools as well. So they will specifically support us with those ongoing initiatives. Strategy 2 is that Mafanikyo program that I started presenting data around. We've seen some really amazing results when we provide additional opportunities to engage. So Mafanikyo currently operates at Coronado, King, Mira Vista, Montalvan, K8, Nystrom, Sheldon, and Washington. And we do want to onboard new sites, Dijon, Downer, and Lincoln, and continue to provide a focus on ensuring that our African American students really are getting that extra academic support, but also really learning about African American diaspora history and culture. And so specifically, this program is going to continue to target both academic, but also that social emotional learning support that is needed to be able to have our African American students feel part of a community that's connected to each other and that's really focused around achievement. And we believe that some of these efforts are going to support us in seeing a reduction of the suspension that Summer talked about. Strategy 3 is really focused on literacy achievement. And so we talked about those mission critical schools, continuing those efforts there because it's working and we still need to improve, but really expanding the practice and the analysis to other school sites to make sure that we have a really critical lens around supporting our African American students at all school sites as well. Strategy 4 is ensuring that we have community outreach and that we're partnering with our educational partners. And so the Office of African American Student Achievement is really going to support community outreach at every school level and ensuring that every single school site has a African American student advisory, a PAC that's really supporting site leaders in schools and being able to in a very focused way, support achievement. For action 5.3, we're looking at program 4170, English language learner support. And this is very much focused on those long-term ELs that I presented to you. For our students, we want, again, to provide that focused leadership that's providing best practices that support the long-term ELs that we have at many of our school sites, at all of our school sites, actually. And ensuring that we're really creating that district expectation about what effectiveness is, what effective practices are, and that they're actually happening in the classroom, and that we're being really intentional about making progress with our students who are long-term ELs. Specifically, we know that the strategy needs to be focused on providing capacity building and providing professional development. And so we're going to be really focused on making sure that our site team gets support from central office around improving academic conversations, speaking and listening, and reading and writing domains. So we can go on to the next slide. So these are the goals. This is goal 5, actions and expenditures.
Thank you, Catherine. Just want to give a high-level overview of the strategy. 1.5 million in LCFF funds are dedicated to these strategies. A total of 3.5 million is listed in this plan. But I think it's also a good time to lift up that these are not the only resources to support these students. There are other resources that we leverage in order to enhance these strategies. But those plans are collaborative plans with other educators and families, and those plans are still being fleshed out. So I just want to name that these are not the only dollars that will be allocated to these strategies. There will be additional dollars allocated to these strategies from other categorical resources. And with that, I'll pass it over.
Okay, it's back to me again. Now I'm going to talk.
So, Catherine,
Go ahead, Summer.
Yeah, I was going to say, we are at what we had planned as time for this meeting. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Mannix for kind of a question for the group of how we want to handle that.
Yeah, Zolan, did you have a comment about that, Ms. Alon, before we jump into that?
Yes, I'm confused about this whole meeting because I wanted to see, this is not what we was sent in the draft, and my team, these meetings that we usually come to like this, you all would usually tell us what y'all took of our recommendations and what y'all didn't take. This looked like a whole bunch of jargon. I can't tell what's going on in the world today. I don't know how to, look at this and see what how to, how can I tell what's going to happen and what's not going to happen? I have to read between the lines. Are you guys confused about what we were looking for? Because we want to see what from our recommendations, and this is a packed meeting. You guys just went through about 5 hours. It felt like 5 hours of information, and we don't even know where and what and how y'all changed, took the recommendations we did and not took the ones, and reason why y'all didn't take the ones we sent forward. This is very, very confusing, and I feel it was a big waste of our time because we still don't know where y'all changed something and what y'all kept the same. It was very disappointing. This was very, very disappointing for y'all to take all y'all time and we still unclear. I'm confused.
So let me clarify. There was a lot of things that you all asked for, right? You asked us for more data, more strategy, and that is exactly what we did. And we do know it is a lot to process all at once. Let's acknowledge that. And we also acknowledge that we are in an unprecedented situation with our LCAP and with how this process has played out. And we have been working with you all to navigate that situation. I 100% understand the sentiments of this being a lot to take in. Now, the annual review at the beginning was really extensive because you really wanted us to cover what was last year, why did you keep it or not? So we spoke to it extensively, and I hear you, maybe so extensively that it's hard to track. In terms of recommendations, part of this process is actually that we need to get written recommendations from you again to bring this back to the board. And so I think that sort of pivots because that's part of this meeting, but we are at time. So we didn't omit your recommendations. We're in a different phase of the process. So let me give it back to Mr. Mannix.
Yeah, and I'll address that too, Ms. Alon. Because this wasn't done properly, in our opinion, the first time, we weren't able to give proper recommendations. And that's why we had that just recommended to outright reject this because we were not brought along in the process. So the goal of this meeting was to actually try to, and I hear your point as well, it's a lot to take in, to try to understand what's in the current new LCAP. And so then we can actually make recommendations, and then we go through the process of whether our recommendations are accepted, rejected, or modified. Is that clear?
I understand, but I don't understand why we having a meeting after the meeting after the meeting. You know what I'm saying? It's like all these meetings, and this was too much information to help who? Like, who did this help? I'm confused. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just confused.
All good. All good. So at this point, because we are at time, and I do want to respect folks' time. And some people I gotta go put down kids, gotta go put kids to bed. I do want to take a vote because we still have 2 more goals to go through, and we also need to actually get together as PACs and talk about recommendations. So we can either extend the meeting to another, I don't know, an hour or so to actually get through everything that we need to get through, or we can request a follow-up meeting on Thursday. Probably Thursday is probably the best that we actually have time to get feedback from the district. So I'll put it up to a vote for folks in the chat here, and we'll just kind of try to take a straw poll, or you can raise your hand in the chat. So for folks who want to extend the meeting an hour, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing many hands for that. So, okay, we'll go to the next one. So for folks that want to have a follow-up meeting on Thursday, please raise your hand. All right, I am seeing many more there, a few there. Okay. So I think that is the majority, and please speak up and come off mute if you don't agree. So we'll look to Summer. I think that's on you to come up with
and we will need to send out a meeting notice right away. So can we say 5 o'clock on Thursday?
Does 5:30 works for most folks? Or that's 5 work for most folks, or should we do 5:30 like we did tonight?
5:30 would be better for me, for sure.
All
I
right.
agree.
So we'll do 5:30 because we'll just send, we are in
Excuse
public.
me,
right now.
Summer. The
Oh, yes.
CAC meeting is 5:30 on Thursday. CAC is 5:30 on Thursday.
Thank you.
So
Okay,
I
so
won't be able to go because I'm the chair, I'm the co-chair.
no, then we really cannot do Thursday. We don't want to interfere, so that would be Friday or Monday.
So the other question, Ms. Alon, is that an hour meeting or is that a 2-hour meeting?
Let me look at my calendar. I think it's from 5:30 to 7:30.
5:30 is okay. Yeah, we can't do it after 7:30. I don't think it's gonna work for most folks. This is so hard to do in a public forum in a giant group like this. So
Yeah.
the other go ahead, Ms. Wanda.
That's okay. Go ahead, Lucas.
Oh, I was gonna say what was the other option? Monday was the other option.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it just means we have to respond to your recommendations faster, which we will just commit to doing before the public hearing on Thursday.
Okay, so sounds like Monday then. I would love to hear any other conflicts. 5:30 on Monday. That is the 12th.
Okay. All right. And I do want to appreciate everyone for taking in a lot of information. This is the level of information you need that we need to give you in small doses monthly. And so I want to reiterate our commitment to that level of partnership, which is right now we're trying to show you all the information on the back end, which is overwhelming. So thank you for your patience.
Mhm.
And thank you, Summer. I'm sorry if I was confused, girl. It's hot and it's late. So I'm sorry.
Hey, you know what? Better to say it and get the clarity. We
Mhm.
appreciate you and your partnership. So, all right, we will get out the notice. We will see many of you Monday. I'm sorry, Lucas, if I cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say too, a lot of the points, we are getting a lot of detailed information. The part that I am still lacking is the clear connection between what are we seeing in the data and what is our evidence that we're using to make decisions. There's a
Mhm.
lot of talk about we need focused central support. What is your evidence or what is your data to actually back up that decision? Because all I'm seeing is data trends. We're seeing that which we identify that there are problems, but there's not a clear link between the problem and why we think the action is actually going to address that problem. So that is my final comment for the night.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. We will continue soon and continue to get better together.
And if I can add to, guys, if you can help us understand how this all student approach is really reaching our targeted students, our UDD students, please help with that, because I don't see it. I think much of our PACs, we're not seeing it. This everybody does not feel equitable, and it's not reaching the students who need it the most, because those numbers are not moving. So please, if there's something there that you're not showing us that helps prove your case here, please bring it forward, because we're not seeing it. And I appreciate the explanations and more of understanding of your thinking, but you're still not making the case for supporting our most neediest students. And that's what the LCAP is designed to support. And we're not meeting that goal, as far as I'm concerned. And I think my colleagues as well. Please help us with that. Thank you. Complete. We done?
We are finished. Good night,
Hey,
everyone.
lovely people.